Hello, my name is Peter Bowmar and welcome to the Bolt Drones exercise. In this exercise we'll set up a system that allows you to shoot lightning bolts from any moving object or set of objects onto any surface that comes within a specific proximity. In practice, you could use this to have electrical discharges flying off of spaceships and connecting to the ground, or anything where lightning bolts are required. The nice thing about this system is that it's completely procedural. So you can have thousands and thousands of these objects shooting lightning bolts onto hundreds of different surfaces. So this exercise shows some of the procedural strengths of Houdini while giving you something practical at the end that you could use in your own effects. The interesting part of this exercise is the creation of the drones, which are quite straightforward and use a particle system that can be used in Houdini Escape. So unlike most particle tutorials, this tutorial can be done in any version of Houdini, including Houdini Escape. That's because we'll use the simpler particle system that's available at the SOP level. The real meat of this is creating the lightning bolts. So I'm going to go over quite quickly creating the grid and the field of towers, as really that geometry isn't particularly interesting, and ultimately in your effect you'll use completely different geometry. Now we'll set up some splitting for the particles. So we're going to change the split from no splitting to split on contact. What this will do, if we just keep the defaults, every time a particle hits, it splits into 3 new particles. So every time a particle hits one of the towers, it splits, and then if it hits some more, it splits again, and so on and so on and so on. You can set the min-max splits to be between 1 and 3, and it will randomly split the particle. It may not split it at all, so it might just keep it at 1, or it might split it up to 3 times. So we can see some that are 2, some that are 3, and some that are 1. You can also make this 30, and you will get some, if I step through this, you will get some particles that split a lot, and other particles that don't split very much at all. To get the beginning point and the end point to blend in an intuitive and artist-friendly way, we'll use a ramp, and specifically we'll start to use a particularly powerful piece of technology called Vops. Vops is basically a language used to modify point attributes and positions, but you don't have to code it by hand. Like everything in Houdini, there are nodes to put together. To begin, we will right-click on the mountain and bring in a Voxpop. So if I stick my display flag down at the end of the Voxpop here, I now have a lightning bolt that is always connecting that surface and the box. And right there, that's a very useful effect. And you might even find that this is all you need for a lot of your effects, is some system like this that puts a couple of points on the surface and then you connect it together with whatever the appropriate effect is, laser beam or lightning bolt or what have you. I'm also going to turn on render light geometry. When I do that, I now see the lightning bolts. So to clear out this window, Shift S will clear out the window and re-render the entire scene for me. And now I can see the lightning bolts as well as the effect that the light has on the scene. And leaving the render view open but paused, just going to click the pause button there. I'm going to dive into the bolts and then dive into the Voxpop. And one of the global inputs is V, or velocity, point velocity attribute. And that has an output as well. And V is the velocity being used by the velocity attribute blur. In other words, the velocity that's on the particles, and because we copied it over, on the bolts. So what I can do is type tab MU to bring in a multiply. Just drop that in there. I'll wire V into the first input and then wire that output to V. I haven't actually multiplied this by anything yet. If I middle click on the second input and say promote parameter, I will get a little spud. If I click on that spud, it's actually a parameter VOP that gives me control in the interface. I'm just going to relabel this to be scale velocity. Set the frame range on this to be 1 to 100. Well, 125, I guess. And if I want the quality of the motion blur to be higher, I'll turn up the pixel samples to, let's say, 6 by 6. Otherwise, I will click render and off it will go. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I welcome feedback on this tutorial or your desires for future tutorials.